Do you struggle with communication in your business? Do your customers say, "We love you," but your communication is terrible? How much are you losing by not having great communication? Communication is key, and you know this, and everybody says it, but what are you doing to improve your communication? Ron Nussbaum, co-founder of the Nuttnest, has set out to provide a simple platform that solves the communication issue for busy contractors. He has backing from Jared Yellen and Grant Cardone. If they care, so should you. This is Help, I'm a Contractor podcast. Hi, I'm Seth Lewis. I am a blue-collar business coach. Finally, someone that understands what contractors actually go through. My goal and vision is to connect business owners with knowledge while tackling some of the industry's toughest challenges. Please subscribe to my content and let's support each other to create awareness for our industry. Check out what I have going on at www.bluecollarbusinesscoach.net. Check out my book that has helped business owners across the country change their business and their life. But for now, it's time for the show. Let's get it. Hey, Ron, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on today.
Hey, Seth, thanks for being here. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your podcast here today.
Man, I'm excited to talk about communication in the construction industry. It's something that is it's talked about all the time, but I don't feel like it's executed. It's not something that's actually done a lot of times. Everybody says communication, but first thing I want to do is just say, what is a crazy construction story, communication issue, anything that you can think of in your experience? You've had, a lot of experience, but anything that jumps out that's just like, man, this actually happened.
So I think one of the craziest things that I can link back to communication, multiple communication breakdowns, is we had a project. We were putting up a new wall on like porch addition. So we had the wall go up. The guy that put the wall up put it up not how it should have been put up. So we had a communication breakdown there between what the expectations were and what happened. So we had to tear that down, had another guy come in, put the wall up, got everything situated, and then communication broke down with the city. And the city was like, hey, we need something else to happen here. And we ended up having to tear the wall down, put it up a third time. Third time was the charm. Homeowner was happy when it was all said and done. Hey, they got to see 3 different walls go up on their house. Wasn't efficient for us, but for them, we still had that end outcome. But there was multiple communication breakdowns along the way that led to definitely not the best project we've ever done.
Right. That's crazy how that happens. This is when I think about communication, I think about how much it costs. I like to really think about the cost of something if we're not doing it, or the cost of the implications. So this is kind of a wild one out there, but it just, to kind of set the stage of how important it is. I mean, people say it's important. People say it all the time. There's nobody that will argue that point. I don't know that anybody will argue that point, that communication is key. But I think it would be fun to kind of just brainstorm a little bit back and forth. What does it cost? So if we just spend a little time just thinking about, by not communicating or having poor communication, what is it costing either your organization or your company or the customer? It could be any of them, but I just kind of want to set the stage, because we all say this and we all believe it is. So, what is that costing people?
I think one of the big things that it costs is, what are your employees doing? Or better said, is what are they not doing because they're out dealing with an issue that's related to communication? We're sitting here having this conversation because that's what I used to do. Is I was out dealing with issues during the day, late at night, on the weekends, that 90% of them I could correlate back to a singular time when there was a communication breakdown, when that homeowner, that customer had a question that didn't get answered how it was supposed to, or they didn't get an answer. And by me being out doing that, I had an owner that was paying me to help develop employees, train, manage the company and grow it into what his vision was. I wasn't able to do that. So by taking my time to deal with communication problems, it was not only hurting our customer experience, it was also hurting the path that we could grow, because that took away from the time that we could be out training new supervisors, we could be out training new foremen and putting new standards and best practices in place to allow the company to thrive and deliver a better customer experience.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. Just take a minute and give us a little bit more about, who you are, where you're located, your background, what you've done, a little bit what you're doing now, which we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But just up to this point, now would just be a great thing to do an introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ron Nussbaum. I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. I'm originally from Akron, Ohio. After the Marine Corps, I ended up in Michigan. That's where my wife's from. So we ended up moving there. I spent then the next over decade in the residential construction industry, working from in the field as a laborer to a foreman to a field supervisor. I spent a few years as a production and operations manager, as well as spent time in the sales department. So I've sat in just about every seat you possibly could in a residential construction company. That has led me to be able to get to where I'm at now. I'm now the current founder and CEO of Nuttnest, and we are out to help 5 million contractors completely reimagine what their customer communication can look like.
Yeah, that's really, really powerful because even how we started, communication is key. That's cliche to even say that. I feel just kind of weird saying that, but as you being the communication expert, tell me a little bit more about that journey. When you were working in those different roles, what did you see, and what were some of the glaring problems? Because here's what happens: somebody that's listening can say, that's what's happening right now in my organization, or that's something that I need to fix. So what did you see that was going on? And just share some light on that.
So what I got tired of hearing all the time was, hey, we love you. We love your company. We love your guys. And we absolutely love the work you do. But your communication sucks. And that led me to down the road to deconstruct what this looks like. Why? Why is that being said? Because we train on communications, like Seth, like you have said, communication is talked about all the time. Either organizations talk about it because it needs to be improved, or all customers are talking about it because it's a glaring complaint in the construction industry. Over 90% of complaints from customers come because of communication. It's not the work. We're fantastic at what we do. In the construction and contracting world, we're the best at what exactly we do, but there's stuff that we're not good at. And bringing in resources to help you be good at that is very critical. And that is why Nuttnest is now here today, is because we needed to solve a problem, or I needed to solve a problem, because I wanted happy customers. I didn't want that stigma to continue to just grow and grow. And it's always, hey, contractors are just horrible at communication. I felt like that was a cop out. That's accepting the status quo as the reason for something. And I wanted to address that. And the best way to do that is figure out exactly what the problem was. So I looked at, why am I out all the time on escalated customers? And what I think we see from the highest level is we see, what is that end problem? Why is this so escalated right now? You're out there and the customer, it's a 911 and the customer is just irate with something. But what we need to look at is what led up to that. Because most of the time it's not that singular incident that goes from 0 to 100. And what I found is along the way, either from the sales process or the leading up to the installation process, or why the crew was out there, there was a communication breakdown. And then that led the customer to then get defensive and started overanalyzing every aspect of the project, but typically didn't want to say anything. And then all of a sudden, one little thing happens, or there's a change on the project, and it is immediately the worst thing that has ever happened. And then you're out there trying to figure out, how do we put out this fire? Well, the fire started a long time ago as just a little thing, a little bit of kindling on there. The spark was lit, started smoking a little bit before. And that's why I've moved my mission and what my passion is into communication. Because if we can fix that and we don't have that moment where that spark happens and that smoke starts, we can get through the project. And if there is a change, or if something doesn't come out exactly what was expected, those conversations happen along the way, and it's no longer completely detrimental to the entire project. Your reputation's no longer completely torched by that customer, because you never get to that point. Because when that customer had an issue or they had a question, it got answered. And they were never left out there to just hanging out there to dry.
So I think people say this word communication, and I'm going to dive into the word communication of like, what is it actually? Because here's the thing, it's overused, it's used all the time. And I find that a customer will say, or somebody will say, I just want more communication. So, but that really doesn't tell us what they want, because it's such a broad area. It's like, I want more fitness. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, is that diet? Is it lifting weights? Do you want to run? Do you want a trail bike? Do you want a box? Whatever. That's the way I look at it. Like, I want more fitness. Give me more fitness. So if I'm a coach, like a fitness coach, like, what does that mean? Now, maybe if you're the expert in communication, you can break that down, interpret it. But I feel like that whole thing is, if I would say, hey, I want fitness, I want communication. So when you think about communication, what I would be interested in saying is, what is it? And when they say that, what do they really mean? And, you gave some examples of like, hey, when this happened or whatever, whatever. Is there specific things that you saw that customers want as, quote, communication? Are there certain things that really just escalate it? So just anything around those ideas might be helpful for somebody.
Yeah. So great questions. Because what you're getting to the root of a lot of this, because what we do here is, I want more communication. Well, what customers are actually saying is they want better communication. They don't want over communication. 90% of your customers are going to be happy as long as they know exactly what's going on. And if they have a question, you answer it, and they get updates throughout the project. They don't want to be bombarded with over communication. That's just the simplest way for a customer just to say, because they don't know. Just like with anything, when we go in and you're looking at a project, customers don't know what needs to happen for a kitchen renovation. They just know what they think they want or what they think they need. It's our job to get them from point A to Z. It's the same thing with communication. It's because it's typically not there and they don't feel like they're getting enough of it. But what they're really getting is they're just getting bad communication. Their questions aren't getting answered. So the first thing they say is, I want more. Well, more bad communication doesn't bridge the gap. You just have a lot more of bad communication. So customers and homeowners, what they want is they want good communication. They want those updates. And you know what they really want to know is when they have a question, it's going to be answered. And it's not going to be, I can't get a hold of the contractor, or I can't get a hold of this person. They're going to be able to reach out to that person, whoever it is in the company, because most companies have multiple people running different areas, and that customer has the sales rep's number. Like, that's it. And 90% of the stuff that happens after the project, that's not the person to call, but that's your only point of contact. So making sure that that customer can talk to the right person so they get answers to these questions on the first call, that's what customers want. They don't necessarily want you to be on the phone every hour giving them updates. They just want that peace of mind. They want to know if they picked the right person to do the project that's going to give them good communication and not bombard them with communication. So I think that when people say we want more communication, that's just a cop out to an emotion they're feeling, because they feel like the communication's either not been there or it's just been very bad. I think if we have just good communication throughout the project, it doesn't have to be anything that's overwhelming for the customer or the contractor.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to just get your insight on like internal business communication. So I know that what you do is with the connecting the customer and the contractor, but communication is a big topic within business offices and settings, et cetera. So one of the things I would just be interested on your take or perspective is, and this isn't a software thing or an app or a program question, but it's more saying, how do you communicate better in the office? Because one of the things I find is people think that what they write is what somebody's going to do. And I can think of something. I was writing something and I said, one of our accountants said, hey, we should pay this at this time or whatever. And I said yes, but then I thought I better explain when I want that done, because that's where you said the kindling gets out of hand. All of a sudden I'm back like, you did that, what and when, and then it's like this big deal. So I guess I see this a lot when organizations grow. So when they go from 2 people to 3, and then there's 15, then there's 20, and they just aren't dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So do you have any simple way or idea or concept in that type of sense with communication of how somebody can know that they're explicit, meaning they're giving exactly what they want, not thinking what they think the other person wants?
We have to be clear in our communication between each other. One of the things that I hate to use the word preach, but something that is very critical from an organizational standpoint is you have to be on the same page. You have to, as a leader in the company, figure out, what does the dialogue look like? How are we going to talk between each other? What are the terminologies we're going to use? Because that's where a lot of inner company communications break down, because the front of the house and the back of the house taught 2 completely different lingos. And then the accounting department taught a crazy one. And then you have the managers that step in that are on a completely different page. So you want to have, as an organization, a general, hey, this is the dialogue we're going to use. These are the terms we're going to use. So everybody's on the exact same page. So Seth, if I'm talking to you about a project and I'm talking about shingles on a roof, we're talking the same dialogue if you're in the accounting department and I'm the one on the roof doing the project. That right there is critical to organization or communication. Because if you don't have that, you're always going to have communication breakdowns. When we look at a lot of communication breakdowns in companies, you have them that come in from the sales department to the install department or the production department. And one of the reasons that happens is because they're not on the same page with the language that's used. It's not that the sales guys are trying to sell bad jobs, and it's not that the installers don't want to install the projects. It's because how that's interpreted between the two is just a different language. And as an organization, you have to get on the same page with what that language looks like. So then when those conversations happen on the front end with the customer and those happen on the back end with the customer, it's the same conversation. And then when they're happening between those two departments, it's the same conversation. And then you don't get that confusion in the organization. So for me, having a plan around what your organization communication piece looks like is just as critical as having some kind of software or something that you use to talk with your customers.
Yeah. And I agree 100% on that. And, in addition, just really specifying if you want something put in the mail, specify you want it put in the mail versus put on somebody's desk. If you want, this to be done on X time, don't just say, yeah, print this or do that. It's like, this needs to be done by this time. And then your team can help and rally behind you. But if you just let things blow up, it's very similar to that customer contractor experience where these little things blow up inside the company when you're not communicating. So I love that analogy of that happens on the customer, but internally, if you're listening, I like to look at it in both ways. So for the contractor homeowner experience, but for the business owners listening as well, it's, hey, you need a software, you need a program. You also need to look at how you're communicating internally. And are you being specific? Because the more specific you are, billing's a great example. If you have a sales rep or an account manager that meets with somebody and they're responsible for the billing, they turn it over. Your billing department doesn't know unless they put the right stuff there. So, and then if billing gets messed up, that's that kindling that starts burning hotter and hotter. Then the customer gets mad. Then you lose the customer because you're building correctly. Communication, keys, being specific. So I love what you're saying there. That's really great.
Yeah, and to go with what you're saying about the exact outcome you're looking to achieve is, for some reason in the construction industry, because we have a reputation of just being direct and to the point, we tend to try to steer away from that. But you can be direct and to the point and not be all rude about it. Like, you can just set those proper expectations, and that's what you have to do with each other from an organization standpoint. Because if you don't have that, like you said, you don't know when something's going to get paid, or the details are left out. And next thing, that customer is like, well, I don't even know what's going on anymore. And then the inside organization says the same thing. I'm sure we've all been there where you had a director of sales or a sales manager talking to an install manager, and both of them are like, we have no idea what's going on this project from either end. And it's because they have an idea in their mind how this works, but no one was ever clear or direct about what exactly was going to happen in what timeline. And they weren't specific on any of it. And then when that communication breaks down in an organization, that's more detrimental to that customer reputation and that customer experience than anything you can do. Because that customer is then going to be like, they can't even communicate with each other. How am I supposed to expect that I'm going to have any better success?
Right. And that's so true, because you have this internal and the external, and we say the communication is key. I'm going back to that thing, but when you really break it down, you have all this internal communication, and you got to break through those barriers, be specific. And then it's also having some way to communicate better with the customer. So that leads me into Nuttnest, and just telling me a little bit about what that is, how it was developed, and why you did it, and how this tackles this exact problem.
So the why is what we discussed earlier. I felt there had to be a better way. And I wanted there to be a better way because I wanted to be able to go do what I was being paid to do. And I wanted happy customers. I wanted customers that were going to go out and refer us and bring us their friends and family and become lifelong customers, because most homeowners and customers only do a select amount of business with you. And there's always a lot that's left on the table because they can't afford that. But if you can continue to have great experiences, they will keep coming back. And that's how Nuttnest was born. Is I wanted a way for my customers to be able to communicate with our company efficiently and not have any of the stuff that I saw, which was like they call the office and the person on the phone says, "Hey, that's John. Let me go see if I can find him. I'll have him call you back." And then next thing, Sam is at the coffee pot, loses the sticky note, never talks to John, goes back to doing what they were doing, and then that customer ends up aggravated because they never got an answer. So our mission at Nuttnest is to help 5 million contractors reimagine what each customer interaction can look like. And what I mean by that is I want to have one call solutions. When your customer picks up the phone to ask a question, we want to make sure they get in touch with the right person at your company that can answer that question every time, and they don't have to call back. It never becomes an issue. So if they have an installation question, they're calling somebody.
We'll be right back to the show. I want to invite you to my Blue Collar Mastermind group. This is a group of blue-collar business owners who share input on tough topics, support, celebrate, and learn from each other. The world's best business owners, leaders, actors, athletes, and musicians all have coaches or are part of a similar group to grow and succeed. If you want more from your business, have limited time, don't want to break the bank, this group is for you. Learn more and apply to the group at bluecollarbusinesscoach.net.
So if they have an installation question, they're calling somebody that knows the right thing about that. Or if they have who's going to be at my house, they know exactly who they're calling and they know they're going to be able to get that answer from them. And by doing that, we've also been able to create a live feed. So think of like a Facebook feed or an Instagram feed that's right in that app that that customer is using to see what's happening in their project. What does that communication look like? Who's coming when? All those live updates happening, whether they're at the house during the project or they're on the other side of the country because it's a rental property or something, or they don't want to be anywhere near it because the last contractor experience was so bad they can't even stay in the same state for this one. That's our solution. And by doing that is we're creating lifelong customers for contractors, because what we're doing is we're taking that communication piece and instead of having 5, 6 different platforms that everybody's communicating on, we have honed in on exactly what communication needs to look like. And we're giving you that outlet that you can leave your customer with the Nuttnest platform and say, hey, this is how we're going to communicate. And then you can go do what you're really, really good at. So we're taking one of those things that's that, like you said, something we hear about all the time is communication is just not good. We're taking that off the table. So now there's a way that that's efficiently being handled. It's in the homeowner's hands because now they know if I have a question, I need to reach out. It's not, I have a question, I don't know who to reach out to, so I'm not going to reach out. That communication is now in their control for them to reach out and get the answers they need. And it allows the contractors and home service providers to go be really, really good at what they're good at. And that's the installation, the sales, the customer experience around the project. And that's what our mission is. And that's what we're doing at Nuttnest.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, when you think about that question of what is communication, you're answering that question. You're defining what it is for contractors that might struggle with it or might have had challenges with it and allowing them to do what they do best. The other thing that I'm hearing is if you're working with Nuttnest, it becomes a value add, a value proposition to say, here is our program or platform, here's how we do it, which I would imagine would increase sales or help you close jobs. Or I mean, what would you say to that?
Absolutely. That is what we're finding, is that when you can offer uh at the end of the project, when you're like, hey, let's get everything on the calendar, let's move forward with this. You're going to download the Nuttnest app right now. That's how we're going to communicate. You just now took one of the major objections off the table, because there's that customers, homeowners are sitting there. That's what they're worried about. Like, are you ever going to call me back? I'm going to give you, we hear it all the time, is I'm going to write you this deposit check, and I'm never going to hear from you, the company, and who knows when you guys are going to show up and do the project. You're taking that off the table right there at that moment by saying, hey, we have a platform that is here for you to utilize, so you don't have to worry about any of that. And giving that customer that peace of mind it's a huge value add.
So now I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute, because somebody is out there saying, well, if your secretary is really good and that person is like the Nuttnest,
Yep.
and they connect you right away to that person, but that person is a field installer or whatever, and they're not good at the communication part ordinarily, but now they have the, the direct line. So whether the office connects it to Jim, I'm just making it up, or Nuttnest gives the direct line to Jim, how do you work with somebody that, or what would you say to somebody that says, well, Jim just likes to build, Jim just likes to, but he's our guy, so the system can only take it so far. How do you advise or coach somebody through that scenario?
So awesome question once again. I love Dever advocate questions. So my answer to the first one, with you have the secretary that can make all those connections, is that scalable? As you grow your business, is that secretary scalable? And in most cases, no. That's not an option for long term. If you want to stay that 1-2 person organization, that Nuttnest is probably not the fit for you. Because what we find is the smaller organizations don't have communication problems, because they're the ones and twos, the moms and pops. They're the ones getting back. It's when you start to grow that you have those issues. So Nuttnest is scalable with you. And then for the second part of that question, with, I think it was John, the builder that just wants to build things, is he's probably not the right guy to be taking those phone calls. So we need to do some training on who is the right person. If John is the right person, we need to train John on having time set aside to be able to talk to these customers, because without the customers having that great experience, John doesn't continue to have a job to do. So there needs to be some training in there with John that's just out building houses, on that you need to separate some of this and create some time, or we need to bring somebody in that John can train to answer these questions. Say, hey, here's the questions we get. Let's have somebody that can answer those, or have John train somebody to do some of the building, so he can then be freed up to have that customer communication piece as well. So I think that there has to be some internal growth and training that has to happen.
One other thing, when you have those people and you get it to the direct people, let's say, again, that dispatcher, the person sitting in the office was controlling all that. Now they're kind of handling it already, but when you roll out something new, especially in the construction blue collar world, it's like, oh no, that's just not the way that we've done it. I'm sticking to yellow tablet. No, thank you. So when you roll this out, is there a way to do that? And when you do that, should that person, is that a way to promote them? Should they get additional compensation? Or is it simply something that's probably already in their job description? What have you found there? Because that is, owners are concerned about that. If I give this, does it seem like more responsibility, and then I got to give a raise to this person? Or is it kind of already what they're doing?
Yeah, it's what they're already doing, or it's what they're trying to already do. Like I had said back with my past experience, I would have been the person receiving a lot of the questions, because that would have just been in my day to day, and it would have been a lot easier for me to proactively do it than have to deal with it when it was the 911 fire. So I think you're simplifying a lot of your people's roles, because that sales manager is no longer going to be getting installation questions. Those installation questions are going to go to the right person, and vice versa. And no one's going to answer accounting questions or billing except for billing. And you're not going to have that runaround. So your people are going to be freed up. They're not going to have to take unnecessary phone calls. So at the end of the day, they're actually going to be able to be more efficient at what they do, because they're only going to be taking the phone calls that pertain to them, instead of having all that other traffic that comes in there as well. So it doesn't, I hear exactly what you're saying, because implementation is one of the hardest hurdles that you have in the construction industry, because you get that status quo thinking of, this is how we've always done it, so this is how we're just going to do it. When at the end of the day, we need to start to move as organizations and as an industry into the 21st century. And that mindset's starting to shift on that. One of the biggest trends in 2022 is technology in the construction industry. And what I'm seeing is, we're seeing a lot of younger builders and contractors, second generation leadership moving into CEO and president roles, that are looking towards technology, that are open to that, because they understand, in order for them to continue to survive and head into 2023 and beyond, they have to start using systems that are out there to better their service. Because if they don't, they're going to get stuck in the past as others implement this in the future and right now.
Great points with technology, and the companies that are adopting it are really going to have a chance to continue to scale. You see that when you implement systems and you can use data and you can look at it in real time, job costing, companies that aren't profitable, companies that aren't keeping good books and don't understand the value of it. I mean, I see that over and over and over again in what I do. And it's disappointing when they don't see it. It's really encouraging when they do see it. And it's even more encouraging when they actually can use the data and make decisions and make it work. So that's really, really powerful. For the owner that is saying, okay, I like this, it sounds good, but I'm a control freak. I'm gonna lose control. We all know one of those. So for that person, are they able to see the communication channels, or if somebody's dropping the ball, they're saying, right now it's all going through me, and they kind of like it in a weird way because they have the control. With Nuttnest, when it goes to the departments, are they able to see what's happening and keep people accountable?
Yeah, so absolutely. They can go into those projects, see what all of this communication looks like. This is also a safety net for contractors, because now we have a record of all this communication, whether it's messaging or phone. We know what transpired and where, and that contractor now has that information. And better yet, what I would say is, if you're that person, that the person that wants that control, let's start out by, you're the person that receives the phone calls. So then what are your customers. There's no better way to continue to grow your business and put the appropriate trainings in place than to know, what are your customers asking? What are the pain points? Maybe being the one that takes those phone calls until you decide exactly where you want those to be directed, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because as being the owner, you have the answers. You're going to be able to give your customer those one call answers and answer their questions. And at the same time, understand exactly what is lacking in, say, the sales process or the installation process or the billing process or the follow-up process. You'll be able to figure that out by taking some of these questions. Because if you get the same question 5 times in a row from 5 different customers, chances are you can probably solve that and make it so it's not a question anymore. And by directing that traffic to the same person, so they're only taking those questions, those people are going to become more efficient because they're going to start to realize the same thing. Because instead of taking 100 different questions, they're taking 15 very specific to what they do questions. They can start to find those trends and then put in better systems in place to allow the customers to not have that question at the end of the day.
I think, that's it's a great point, and it's a great thing to connect to other things. I'm actually going to connect it to the sales side of things for a moment, but just to show you how that point of analyzing what you're getting as, I'll call them objections, which still can relate to customers, complaints, whatever. They're like uncles or nieces or whatever, or cousins, right?
An objection is just a complaint without the project started yet.
Right. So in the sales process, it's saying, okay, if you're seeing certain things, and this is a coaching point here, but like if you're seeing certain things, you really, that's a cue, that's a light bulb going off to say, I really have to adjust my process to answer that ahead of time. If you want to close more deals, here's a free tip out there. If you want to close more deals, you got to adjust the process to handle the objections before they come. If you're paying any attention, the objections are coming. You should be able to tee them up. I like to think objections scare people. I like to put that objection on a tee, like T-ball, and smack it out of there because it's coming. And if you know it's coming, you can set it on a tee and you can crank it out of the park. So the same thing is true with what you're saying with owners studying their business. Get to know your customers, get to know what they want. Use this as an opportunity to hear and test the market, or assign somebody to do that. Have one person. You could use your dispatch person in transition to hear what it is and take surveys and then get it to the right spot. So I just hear a lot of good stuff, with this. With the Nuttnest thing, is there anything else that you want them to know or to hear, from this? And where can they find you, if this is something that they want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I want everybody to know is that we're here to help move you forward. We're here to work with the construction industry. That I'm from the construction industry. I was a Marine. This is designed to work with you. This wasn't just designed to just be like, hey, here it is. Like, we developed this platform, go use it. This was designed because there's a problem that has to be solved. And we're here to work with you on that. We only get better if you get better. And that's what we want to be. Like I said, we want to be hey, this is how we handle communication so we can go do what we're really, really good at. If you want to find out more, Nuttnest.com. You can find me, Ron Nussbaum, on LinkedIn, as well as feel free to shoot me an email, ron@nuttnest.com. I'd be happy to go over anything. We can do a demo, and I'll show you exactly what the product looks like and what we're doing to change that customer experience and what each one of those interactions look like.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show today. It was great information. Communication is key, but we got to understand what people mean by wanting better communication. I think you did a great job of that. I'm excited about Nuttnest and what it's going to do and how it's going to change the industry with communication. And I love what you're doing. I love what you're about. So thanks for being on the show today.
Hey, Seth, thanks for having me. I loved it. Anytime that you want to talk about communication, feel free to reach out.
Thanks again. Hey, it's Seth. Thanks for listening. For more information about my Blue Collar Mastermind group, Blue Collar Gear, free resources, or my book, go to bluecollarbusinesscoach.net. You can subscribe, like, and share if you enjoy this. Thanks again.